Good afternoon and welcome to Selfridge Cable Access TV. I'm Jack Jovan, Chairman of the Selfridge Town Council. I'm here with the first installment of Chairman Chats, a new venue for me. I used to do this when I was on the school committee as the chairman. It was a pretty good program to get some topics out to the community. I'm here today with Dr. Jeffrey Villar, the receiver superintendent for the Selfridge Public Schools. This is the first segment, so welcome, Dr. Villar.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Good to be here. So we picked the schools and the school system as the first installment of this because I think that's one of the critical issues in town facing us right now. I think the council over the last 6 months, since I've been on the chairman, we've identified a lot of different areas. One being the fire department. We'll have the fire chief in maybe next month to talk about his new leadership. But the schools have really been the hot topic going way back, probably 10 years, going back when I was on the school committee. And you've been here almost a year, right, Dr. Villar?
Yeah, I'm 10 months in. February 12th will be the year.
So I actually had an opportunity to watch your first installment that went with our town manager, Ron San Angelo, which was a great introduction for you into the town as you introduced yourself. So I guess you've been here 10 months, closing in on the 1 year, which would mark what you just mentioned before we started, the longest tenure of the receiver. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, absolutely.
Okay, so that first 12 or 10 months that you've been in here, what do you think has been your main issues that you've been facing? Sure.
Yeah, it is incredible. It's been 10 months. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to close in on that year. You know, I'm fully intent on being here when we're fully turned around. A lot of work to do, but you know, what I started out after, I had the advantage of starting in February, taking a look at the system, and then we launched this year, this August, really focused on climate and culture. And we have a long way to go with that. I simplify it by saying we need happy students and happy teachers in our schools, but it really does symbolize something that's important. If we saw kids happy to go to school and teachers feeling like their work is being impactful and meaningful, I think we'd start to see achievement follow that. And what that requires is for me to do a much better job of creating systems where students and teachers can be successful. So we have a huge amount of work to do around that, but it's a number one priority. You know, a way we're tackling that is we're very pleased, and actually this is the first time I'm sharing it I think on television, but we will be a national demonstration site with the University of Connecticut to work solely on climate and culture in our schools. So they're partnering with us. We have a signed MOU. They're committed 5 years. That means free technical assistance to all of our schools on a very purposeful, research-driven way of improving climate and culture. And that means student discipline, student attention, engagement of students in lessons, you know, and many other aspects. Also surveying teachers and parents and students on a regular basis to understand how they feel about school. So that's been my number one thrust, because I think we have to have that foundational piece. Important to that, creating data systems that allow us to really have meaningful data to monitor our decision making. So the impact of certain curricula, certain books, how does it impact student learning, looking at student discipline issues, student attendance issues, and making changes to either policies, procedures, and approaches to get a better impact. As we're going into the budget season, looking at our current results data to try to figure out how to best position our staff to have an impact on student learning in our district. So we need those systems in place. I am pleased that there's been tremendous work in partnership with the town around the financial systems, and we are on a much stronger footing now than we were just a year ago. I intend on making a much more transparent process. And we're also working with the town on a Munis implementation, which is a fancy data system that will help us on the school side with personnel, time tracking, and financial tracking, processing purchase orders, etc. Certainly help on the town side with a whole host of town functions. And again, seeking transparency and accuracy. So those systems are really important too. So those are the foundational pieces. There's a whole bunch of educational changes that we think need to happen, but you got to get the bones first and build a solid foundation, and so that's what we've been focused on.
So we've talked a lot, and I really appreciate the fact that you have made time from not only myself but other fellow counselors. You're very accessible for us to come into your office and have really substantive conversations about what's going on in the schools, and you haven't hidden from some of the issues. And I know you talk a lot about this climate and culture. So when you talk about climate, what do you specifically mean about the climate first, and then
Sure.
the culture second?
Well, like I said, we want happy children, happy teachers. But so when you walk into a school, if you spend some time as an educator, you can get a feel. But there are ways to measure that too. And so talking with teachers and finding out about their job satisfaction, how they feel about issues around meeting student needs. So particularly with younger children, if school's not working out for them and they're not successful, you're going to see it in discipline, so that they may misbehave. And then what systems are in place to address that misbehavior? With little children, you don't want to suspend a first grader, so this is about teaching and how to teach them appropriate behaviors and how to react to different stimuli in school and support them. So we look at survey data from parents and teachers for younger children to see how that climate is coming together. Candidly, one of the areas that we've struggled with is programming for students with special needs in our schools. And so we do have children with emotional needs who may not react as a typical child would. And so you might see, to the average person, it looks like a temper tantrum over something that seemed to be pretty silly. And so why are you overreacting? We have to learn, and we do know how, to program around that child so we can minimize those disruptions, ensure that learning continues. We are obligated under state and federal law to educate all kids, and so some children require a lot more services. The trick for us when we look at our climate data, what I have seen is we haven't done a good job of programming for all students, dealing with troubling behaviors, and supporting teachers who are struggling to teach 20, 25 children at the same time while dealing with some kids with some pretty spectacular needs. It's a really difficult juggling act, and I think we have some really frustrated teachers in the district. I spend a lot of time in the buildings. I spend a lot of time looking at our data, and it's obvious that folks want more support. They feel that there are some students that we need to figure out different ways to educate. As a district and as a town, we do currently have 30 children who are educated in facilities that aren't our public schools, which costs us about $2.5 million annually. So that's a significant issue. But I'm committed that as a district, we program to meet kids' needs, not to save money. I think it's really important. So that means if a child should not be educated in a normal public school, then we place them in the school they should be in. We follow the federal and state process to do that. It's a very convoluted, mandated process, but we have to make those decisions because that's what's right for those children. Then we have to do a better job of supporting our staff with kids who should be in our schools. So I think that right now, if you were to say, what's the number one concern in the district? There's a lot of teacher frustration on how to best meet their students' needs. They want their kids to be successful, and I think they would love for me to be able to bring to them a whole bunch more resources. And that, obviously we live in the real world, so we have to balance all that. But so when I talk about climate and culture, it's those things, like so how kids are behaving, how teachers are reacting, are teachers supported, do they feel good about their jobs? Do families feel schools meet their kids' needs? Are we dealing with issues of bullying and harassment, misbehavior? There's lots of layers to it. But it's a pretty big picture. And all of it has to always get better. And I think with the disruption in leadership that this district has suffered from for about a decade, receivers contributing to it, unfortunately, we haven't improved. And so that's why I intend on staying here and making sure we improve.
So when you talk about, this is a multi-year process, and I think you've been honest in that, you really see this as not just a quick fix, but a long-term turnaround.
For sure. I remember saying that in one of my first public meetings, 5 to 7 years was the estimate. Sometimes I think it's 7 to 9 after 10 months in. Like, we have core systems that we're just getting online, so that means, again, the financial system was in a really horrible state not too long ago. Now it's solid. That's great. Now we're going to work on making it transparent so people understand it. The education system, as far as collecting data around our performance, we just put a system in place this July. And so now we'll have quality historical data on student performance. Luckily, the state has some of that because there's state reporting, so we can pull that down. That's helpful. But we should have a local system that's solid, easy to access, that's in place. We've made huge curriculum changes, K-12 and language arts in particular, to make sure that all the instructional programs for our kids are on grade level, state appropriate, and guarantee that if they do well in our programs, that they'll do well as they leave our schools, which is really important. We're working on mathematics next. One might say, why not just do it all at once? Well, because we have small number of teachers who have to master all this new information, this new content. It changes how they deliver their instruction every day. That's hard. It's going to take our teachers multiple years to become truly masters of the new curriculum. It doesn't mean they don't know how to teach reading. It's teaching reading with new resources. So it's a little more complicated. The climate and culture piece, an implementation of the program like what we're doing with UConn, on average is a 5-year process. So it's about really getting all of the adults on the same page and reinforcing the same system of teaching discrete expectations on behavior, reinforcing for kids what we want to see from them, then looking carefully at our climate data, making good decisions based on what's actually happening in schools. I oversimplify, but it's really important that you use the data to do that. So all those things in of themselves are multi-year projects. We're doing 2 or 3 of them at the same time. And then after we're successful, I can see 2 or 3 other major areas that we need to work on. So to say it's a quick fix would be disingenuous. It took a good 10, 12 years for us to get where we're at. I'm all about making sure we do it well. It has to be so that when my job is done, I can leave Southbridge and the new superintendent and school committee take over, and they have a machine that works, a sustainable budget that the town can afford, a system that won't begin to collapse upon itself again. So it's solving immediate problems looking down the road. So yeah, I see this as, you know, a long-term project for sure.
So going to the budget issues, and you've worked very closely with the town council in the past year, and I look forward to working with you this year as we build the budget. A lot of people will say that administration is very top-heavy based on the needs of the district, but in our conversations you have said that you really have to build those systems and then transition away from that. How do you see that working? Yeah,
I'm glad you asked that question, because it is top-heavy in some sense, right? So I currently have 2 assistant superintendents, one who's working on the secondary school redesign and the other who oversees really all of our student services, which is special education, 504 plans, all kinds of student accommodations. In a typical district this size, you may have an assistant or you'd have a director of curriculum. You know, right now we have additional curriculum people helping support the implementation of this new language arts curriculum that typically you may not have in a district. We're a little light actually on the assistant principals at the middle school. I have 1 instead of the 2 that the typical model has, but we have a dean of students filling in that role. But overall, the purpose is because we're constructing systems and we're trying to build capacity among our staff. I need to be able to attract people who have deep experience, who have done this in a lot of different places, and can really help contribute to solving some of these problems. And they all understand that we're here until the job is done, and then we have to transition into a sustainable system. You know, that's a much smaller footprint in a town like this. Important to point out, about $1 million of aid come directly from the State Department that supports these positions. It's not all local funding for that. It's part of the turnaround effort. But once we've established a solid system, we should expect Southbridge to return to a district size of, you know, superintendent, curriculum director, maybe a business person, and a much smaller footprint. That's what's sustainable. But the work we're doing now is both managing a district and recreating it at the same time, which is a little different than just managing a district, which is a full-time job in of itself. There's plenty of work running a district, but we have to rebuild a district. And so that's a little more complicated.
So as you build these systems and try to transition back to local control, how are you empowering the citizens, or what are your thoughts about the town's residents getting involved in that type of turnaround?
Yeah, we are, with the secondary school redesign process, we want to create a system or an approach where we can engage folks in like what changes would we like to see at the high school in particular. What we know about high schools across New England and the country is employers and colleges are saying our graduates aren't prepared for the 21st century. And that's not surprising if you look at the model of high school that exists in most places, Southbridge included. It was designed really in the 19th century, and they originally were designed to sort people into those who were going into academia and higher education and those who were going to go into some type of manufacturing or labor type role. That all changed with NCLB back in the early 2000s, where the mandate is all kids should be college and career ready. For a while, we flirted with college only. I think reality says, no, college and career makes a lot of sense. So we want to engage the community to have a conversation about, well, how can Southbridge High School interface with local businesses and stakeholders and create a system that works really good for Southbridge kids so that when they're graduating our school, they're prepared to make an informed choice. I'm going on to advanced manufacturing, or I'm going on to Harvard. Wherever you might be going, it's a choice, not a forced decision. And so we need to look at the pathways there. So engaging the community in those conversations. I've already found that the Southbridge Business Partnership has been a super advocate. Members of the town council have a lot of good ideas. Engaging parents and students themselves. I think we're going to get some really good insights. So we just started this process of the redesign. Much more will come really next fall. This spring, a lot of the work is around just improving the structures of instruction at the high school. But we want to have a community engagement component that's very robust so that we can really hear from folks here. I just know there's a lot of people interested in what happens at Southbridge High. It's been very clear in the last 10 months.
Yeah, there's no doubt that, myself, I'm a graduate of Selfridge High School back way too long ago. My 2 children, well, actually 3 children, all graduated from the high school, all, doing very well. So I know the capacity is there, and I know there's a tremendous amount of their fellow colleagues that were in school that have gone on and are doing great. So how do we go about as a town to change this negative thought about what Selfridge Public Schools are, to try to engage the community, not have that drag as that it's just a bad place that kids don't learn? Because I don't believe that at all. I think my belief is that we get the very best teachers out of anywhere, because they all come out of the same schools. So I don't think we have we don't have bad teachers. I think earlier you said that we have to have support of them.
Yeah, for sure. Our teachers work darn hard. Now, like I said, I spent a lot of time in the schools. Last week I spent 8 hours at the middle high school. The teachers are working really hard as they go in and out of the classrooms. There's no doubt about it. They're dedicated. They come to work every day to try to make a difference for their students. I do strongly believe that with all the leadership changes they've faced in the last decade, they have been led to the left, to the right, to the center, to up, to down, and all these changes in what is expected of them has really eroded a solid curricular system where teachers can build off of learning that kids got from previous classes and really make a meaningful instructional program for kids. So we're recreating that. Now we have to also support them in the climate and culture work around making sure that we have engaged students and have a system to address when kids make bad choices, which all kids do. I wish, I'm a parent of 6 and my kids make bad choices at times, and so you need a system to deal with that and to teach them what they need to do. And when we create those systems that work, I think we'll see a difference, for sure, where teachers will be able to make a larger impact, give them a better tool. Because right now we create circumstances where they're really frustrated. I'm really proud that we have these teams of teacher leaders at all of our schools that are planning these climate and culture changes and how they're going to react and really engage kids in learning. We also have teams of teachers at the middle high school that are working on their new curriculum and are planning with their fellow teachers on how to make that happen. So real leaders have stepped up, and they're doing good work. So the future's kind of bright. It's just a matter of continuing to support that. And again, it's like a broken record, but my intention is staying here so that they can stay the course. Right? So their effort on climate and culture and their effort on literacy and language arts instruction is not going to be wasted. Because the worst thing that happens is I leave, a new leader comes in and says, oh, you know what, I think we should work on math right now. We'll do language arts later. And then suddenly, all that work is like a sandcastle as the tide comes in. Imagine if you're one of those teachers. They've faced that for the last decade. So, it's got to be very difficult for them. And so I think many of them still don't believe it when I say, oh, no, I'm staying, and we're going to get this done. And I'm going to support you to get it done. We're going to find a way to support teachers to get it done. I think that's the number one concern that they have. But I see a lot of good hope because they're working hard.
I think that is a very important point that you just raised, is the fact, and I think it goes back many years. I was been involved in the schools for a long time, and stability is the number one issue. And we've heard over the years so many people that have come into town and said, no, I'm in it for the long haul, and they leave. I'm in it for the long haul, and then you have this constant turnover. And then, and I've said it many times, that a teacher in the front lines is not going to have buy-in to whatever that leader is going to say, because they'll just say, well, they tell it now, but they're not here to stay. How are you going to, I know in our conversations, and I've seen you out in the public, and even at public meetings, that people have questioned, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. How are we going to get that buy-in to the commitment that you are going to stay and stay the course?
Yeah, it's something that I carry in the forefront of my mind as I have been working with folks in the district, because in many ways there's a trauma around that, like for teachers. It's almost like a PTSD and leadership change over and over again. One, walking the walk and just being there, I think matters. We started the conversation saying it's almost a year, and that's actually a pretty big deal. If I get to February 12th, that's a big deal. It's a year in. Year two is a bigger deal. Like people can be like, okay, these are 2 years. I'm actually sending a communication out to my staff for the holidays, and I'm addressing this issue just so they know that I'm serious about being here. I've had a really good career prior to being here and had choices, and this was a passion choice. I believe in the kids in Selfridge. I know it can get done, and so that weighed heavy on my decision to come here. And so for me to leave, I would feel like a complete failure. I intend on leaving here a success, leaving here, turning the keys over to somebody else. I think it's going to take a while. I feel I have 100% support from the commissioner. I meet with him regularly. He understands this work. He understands the importance of it, and is also committed to it. So I guess people are just going to have to see me walk the walk. I think is really what's going to have to happen here. And I hope, I really appreciate the support that you and the town council have given, because I think this is work I can't do alone. I need leaders to step up and say, let's get this done. This is good for our kids here in Southbridge. And that's the sense I have. Yeah.
Well, and that's an important point. I mean, this is a community issue. It's quality of life in the town. It's how we build the town itself as well, because it goes hand in hand. You have to have good public safety, strong public safety, which the council in the last 6 months has worked really hard to rebuild the fire department to have it full capacity, that they can respond to the emergencies. I'm happy to say, as of today, that is fully staffed, new chief, new deputy chief, leadership, and the police department is pretty well staffed. So that school issue is the fabric that we have to attract families to stay in town.
Right.
And build that base, and we look forward to working with you on that. So I guess we have a couple more minutes left. So again, I think the biggest issue that we're hearing out there right now is the culture and climate, and that perhaps after the first of the year, we may see different changes within the middle school.
Yeah, you know, middle high school is our largest challenge because that's when kids can vote with their feet, right? Kids are old enough to make their own independent decisions. And, you know, right now, class cutting is a big issue, and that comes to student engagement. It's part of that's curriculum. Part of that is the structures around and working with kids to understand the importance of certain content and why they need to learn it. Middle school in particular, we are going to send a communication to families because we are going to change the schedule mid-year to make sure there's less downtime for students, less movement about the building, because we need to make sure kids are in class and engaged. And we want to make sure that we create an environment that's proactively supporting good conduct on the part of students. And not presenting them with distractions and forcing them to make many choices throughout a day of, I got to do what I would like to do or what I need to do. Again, parent of 6 kids, I know that given the choice, kids do what they want to do, not always what they should do and need to do. So we need to help support good decisions in school. So we're starting with things that we can control very easily, and one of them is to make sure that the schedule supports the best choices among kids and sets our teachers up to be successful. So that change has to happen mid-year based on the data I've seen over this last 3 months. The school's not where it needs to be. So we're going to take a pretty dramatic change. I think it's good for the kids, and I think we'll see pretty quickly some climate changes. And
I think once that's addressed, the teachers, you know, will embrace it as well. And one of the big concerns is also that we talk about administration turnover, but we also talk about teacher turnover. How are you going to address that in the next couple of months as the year closes to retain the teachers that we have that are frustrated that have been here?
Well, one thing I want to point out, like the middle school schedule changes, they were developed by teachers. So what we said to the teachers is we have a problem, let's solve it, can you produce a model? And so a team of teachers at the middle school spent a lot of time and presented to us a solution that we're going to go with. And I think that's related to retaining teachers. We need to empower them appropriately to solve some of these instructional problems, to help with the implementation of curriculum, so which is what we're doing with our language arts and math. They're empowered on our climate culture teams at every school, where they are going to continue to make decisions about how to impact the schools in which they work. I think that, in the long run, is what's going to retain people. In the short term, there's a lot of work to be done, but I believe that when teachers feel like they're making a difference, impacting students' lives, that their voice is heard, and they're part of a solution, that is more rewarding to them than any salary we can pay. And they will stop voting with their feet when we start to, engage them more in our schools. So we have a long way to go, but I see glimmers of hope, and I see the teachers have been working with us to solve our problems, and that's what we need to see a lot more of. They've been a real advocate and asset for us.
Oh, well, great. So we're coming up on the end of our first installment. So I really appreciate the fact that you had the time to come in and talk to me today as we get out in the community and talk about what's happening in the schools, because it is important that we are transparent and that we do come together to work to solve the issues and make it great for our kids, great for our teachers, and great for everyone. I look forward to, maybe we'll perhaps on your anniversary date in February, we'll schedule the next date so that you can come in and say that we're at the 1 year mark, this is where we're at, and perhaps further discussion about the culture and climate. I think the great thing is, not once did we talk MCAS.
There you go. We're not going to do that.
It's great that we're talking about how we change culture, climate, put the systems in place, put the curriculum in place, and the tests should take care of themselves.
Agree 100%. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for being here. I wish you a joyous, happy New Year and best of holidays, and look forward to talking to you again in the future.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.